You go ahead and start when you're comfortable.
Hello, my name is Zach Scruggs, and this is my AP research project titled The Influence of Social Media Tracking Features on Teenage Behavior in Randolph County, North Carolina. Social media plays a major role in modern teen life, and platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Life360 are used on a daily basis by millions of young people. But beneath the surface of posting, liking, and snapping are powerful tracking features that monitor behavior, movement, and interactions. In this study, I focused on how these tracking elements shape real-world behavior of teens in my local community. The central question I sought out to answer in this research is, how do social media tracking features and app tracking devices influence teenage behavior in Randolph County? This question guided every stage of my research, from literature review to data collection and analysis. I chose Randolph County because it represents a smaller, tight-knit community where social interactions are awfully deeply interconnected. I aim to investigate not just if behavior is influenced, but how, in both subtle and overt ways, such as communication patterns, risk-taking, privacy management, and self-presentation. My reasoning began with the observation that teens are spending more and more time on apps and social media as a whole. These apps have embedded tracking. These features often function invisibly. Many teens don't realize how their activity is being monitored and used to personalize content or report behaviors. In a community like Randolph County, where everyone seems to know each other, these digital tools extend into real life. Whether it's a friend noticing a Snapchat location or a parent tracking a teen via Life360, these platforms affect how teens act, where they go, and what they choose to share. By focusing on behavioral action, this research adds broader conversation about youth, privacy, and social norms in the digital age. Social media platforms collect a vast amount of user data. Casthout and Alawinali explained that over 90% of today's data was generated in just 2 years, driven largely by mobile devices and social media. Van Dyck argues that these systems are not neutral. They're designed to create feedback loops that promote certain behaviors while discouraging others. Tracking systems include cookies, behavioral analytics, and GPS data. This tracking is what allows apps to target content so effectively, but it also means that users are constantly being watched and measured. For teens, this can impact their choices in both conscious and subconscious ways. The Child Mind Institute found that teens often rely on social media for identity formation and peer validation. Bayer and colleagues highlight how platforms in Instagram and Snapchat shift the way people interact and introducing new anxieties around public perception, self-image, and digital reputation. Likes, shares, and views become performance metrics for teens. They worry whether they'll be seen favorably or rather than thinking about reflecting their authentic values. This creates a system of reward and punishment where online feedback drives real-world behavior and sometimes leads to increased conformity and anxiety. Teen social media use continues to rise. According to O'Keefe, more than half of teens are online multiple times a day, with 22% describing themselves as constantly connected. The shift from in-person hangouts to digital communication through features like Snap Maps and TikTok Trends means the social validation and are increasingly linked to visibility and engagement. Teens are more likely to view social media as a necessary part of life rather than just a hobby. This normalization of tracking and surveillance creates a culture where being watched feels ordinary and sometimes even expected. My interview design. Each student was asked the same set of 8 questions. If a student misunderstood a question, I clarified without leading the answer. The questions addressed 4 main themes: platform use, peer influence, behavioral change, and parental monitoring. This format allowed me to code responses and identify patterns later on. All interviews were transcribed via Google Doc and double-checked for accuracy afterwards. My participants and ethics. I interviewed students from Southwestern Randolph High School. Participants were selected through voluntary response with the help of a teacher. The sample skewed slightly towards male and consisted of mostly upperclassmen. I also chose to interview through Ms. Landon's class, which was a combination of both credit recovery students and community college students. So I felt it was a good combination of both high academic and more normal students. Originally, I had planned to distribute surveys to a broad group of high schoolers in my county. However, North Carolina state policy restricts students from surveys, so I shifted to a qualitative interview-based method. This allowed for rich, detailed response, but with a trade-off of a smaller sample size. My guiding principle was consistency. All interviews were conducted using the same core questions to ensure comparability across all participants. Interviews took place in quiet, semi-private areas, such as empty classrooms and libraries. I avoided group interviews so students would feel more comfortable expressing honest opinions, especially when discussing topics like parental control. This setting helped capture more genuine responses in my interviewing process. My results. When asked questions on peer influence, students rated how much their close friends' likes affected their content interaction on a scale of 1 to 10. The average peer influence rating was a 6.4 out of 10, which suggests a moderate to high influence on what they like and how they view content their friends like. Additionally, 50% of students said that when a social media platform publicly displayed likes, it changed the type of content they liked or interact with. 37.5% said it did not change their behavior, and 12.5% were not applicable. Question 8 asked, are your parents able to see your location? If so, how does it change your behavior? 87.5% of students asked said yes, their parents could see their location, and of those, all of them said it directly impacted their behavior. Common responses included, I don't speed or go places I shouldn't. I drive safer because I know my parents will check my location and my speed. I avoid places I'd have to explain to my parents of me being there. Only 12.5% said that location tracking did not affect their decisions, but even they acknowledged that they had already practiced safe habits while out. These results revealed that location tracking through social media app platforms produces observably behavior modification in these teens, causing them to react safer as a result. Several consistent patterns emerged from the interviews and showed how tracking features are influence behavior on these teens. 100% of participants, every single student, reported a daily use of one or more in that following apps: Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Life360. 87.5% of students said that tracking features changed their behavior on social media. 75% of participants admitted that they altered their likes or posts based on how they thought others would perceive them. Another 87.5% indicated that they acted differently when being tracked by their parents, especially regarding driving habits, where they go, where they hang out, and who they hang out with. These percentages highlight the widespread behavioral impact of tracking tools in digital spaces, particularly for teenagers navigating social life and independence. This shows that at least half of participants feel socially influenced by tracking visibility features built into these apps. The data shows both social and psychological impacts. Socially, the students have behaved differently based on perceived visibility, whether peers on Instagram or parents on Life360. Psychologically, on one hand, students feel safer and more accountable, but on the other hand, they may feel controlled, anxious about constantly being watched. The interviews reflected a shift in how social norms are enforced. In the past, peer pressure might have been in person. Now, through social media platforms, teens internalize these norms and adjust their behaviors accordingly, sometimes to conform, sometimes to avoid scrutiny. The need to look good online can lead to curated personas that differ from real identities. Parental surveillance adds another layer that shapes teens' routines and positively affects their choices. This research suggests that several implications. For parents, tracking can improve safety of their kids and but may be undermined if it's overused on their children. For educators, digital literacy should include understanding of how tracking features work in social medias. For teens, awareness of how tracking affects behaviors can help promote more intentional tech use. For the app developers, there's a need for more transparency and customizable privacy settings. Ultimately, tracking features are not neutral. They are behavioral tools that shape habits, self-presentation, and social dynamics. Limitations. There are several limitations to the study. The sample size is small and specific to one school. Self-reporting is always vulnerable to bias because the study is local, the results may not be generalizable to larger and urban populations. However, despite these limitations, the study offers valuable insights into how tracking features affect day-to-day teenage behaviors. To conclude, this research found clear evidence that social media tracking features shape teenage behavior in Randolph County. Teens alter the way they post, where they go, and how they act based on who's watching. The presence of constant observation changes how teens experience freedom, connection, and safety. As these technologies become more embedded in daily life, understanding their behavioral impacts will become increasingly important for families, schools, and society at large. Future research could expand this study in several ways. Could include a broader and more diverse sample size, different schools, ages, and backgrounds. They could use passive data collection like actual screen time or app logs to compare with self-reports. They could explore how tracking impacts mental health, especially anxiety and self-esteem, and examine gender-based differences and how these effects play out in rural versus urban settings. The goal would to build a more comprehensive understanding on how tracking tech in social media apps and other apps intersects with team development. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Do y'all have any questions?
All right, if you'll look to Miss Grove, she'll ask you first.
How did you determine which results generated by your research method were most important in informing your new understanding?
Could you repeat it?
How did you determine which results generated by your research method were most important in informing your new understanding?
So I asked a multitude of different questions to my interviewees, but the deciding factor in the data I found more important was ultimately what changed their values and how they behaved on a daily basis, and how it affected them psychologically and mentally. And some of the questions were more of just asking them if they use social media and how much they used it, but the information I found more important was how it affected them mentally.
And you touched on this a little bit, but how did the limitations of your methods or data influence your new understanding?
Yeah, so originally I wanted to do surveys, like I said, but that wasn't possible because of legislation passed by North Carolina banning surveys. So interviews helped me get a more local and rural information and understanding of the issue of social media and the tracking features they hold. And I feel that because I was forced to go local, I learned more rural and less widespread.
Thank you.
What was the most important research skill you developed as a result of this process, and how might you apply it to your future endeavors?
I'd say the most important skill I've learned through this process is the interviewing and being able to talk to someone face to face. And I feel I'll be able to use that skill later on in life in business and school, future school projects, and overall in my future career.
All right, very good.